Bueno. Estamos en la CPU. Si alguien te pidiera calcular la raíz cuadrada de 5.439.493, 5,000,439.493, ¿qué harías mentalmente? A menos de que disfrutes mucho los problemas matemáticos tediosos, probablemente usarías una calculadora. ¿Qué ocurre con el sistema binario? Probablemente tampoco lo calcularías mentalmente. Hay una calculadora muy potente en tu computadora que procesa los objetos binarios. Ya hablamos sobre la calculadora interna en detalle. ¿Sabes cuál es? Es la CPU, el cerebro de las computadoras. En este video hablaremos de los aspectos más prácticos de la CPU. ¿Recuerda el libro de instrucciones del que te hablé en una lección anterior? La CPU la usa para traducir los datos y realizar funciones en ellos. Este libro de traducción se llama conjunto de instrucciones, que es literalmente una lista de instrucciones que puede ejecutar la CPU. Funciones como sumar, restar o copiar datos son instrucciones que puede realizar la CPU. Aunque sea extremadamente complejo, todos los programas de tu computadora se desglosan en instrucciones muy pequeñas y simples que están en el conjunto de instrucciones. Los conjuntos de instrucciones están en hard coded en la CPU, por lo que las diferentes fabricantes de la CPU pueden usar distintos conjuntos, pero en general realizan las mismas funciones. Lo mismo ocurre con los fabricantes de autos, crean diferentes motores, pero todos hacen lo mismo. Probablemente trabajes con hardware como especialista de asistencia en tecnologías de información, ya sea reemplazando discos duros, actualizando módulos de RAM o instalando tarjetas de video. Necesitas saber sobre los productos, probablemente conozcas algunos fabricantes populares de CPU o chipsets como Intel, AMD, Qualcomm. Estos usan distintos nombres de productos para diferenciar sus procesadores como Intel Core i7, AMD Athlon, Snapdragon 810 y Apple A8, entre otros. Ahora cuando escuches estos términos sabrás lo que significan. Cada uno de estos fabricantes de CPU tienen sus fortalezas y debilidades. Si te interesa saber por qué algunas CPU son más populares que otras, puedes consultar la siguiente lectura complementaria. Cuando selecciones tu CPU, debes asegurarte de lo que sea compatible con tu motherboard, la placa de circuitos que conecta todos los componentes. Advertencia: no puedes solo comprar varios componentes y esperar que funcionen juntos. Hay varias formas en que las CPU se conectan a la motherboard con diversos zócalos. Tu CPU puede tener muchos pines que sobresalen a tener contacto que parecen puntos. Según la motherboard que tengan, debes asegurarte de que la CPU se ajuste bien al zócalo. Por ahora hay dos tipos principales de zócalos de CPU: matriz de contacto en rejilla LGA y matriz de rejilla de pines PGA. En un zócalo de LGA como este hay pines que sobresalen de la motherboard. El tamaño del zócalo puede variar, así, así que primero debes asegurarte de que la CPU y el zócalo sean compatibles. Cuando compres una CPU o una motherboard, verás en la caja el tipo de zócalo que tiene. Asegúrate de que el zócalo de la CPU y de la motherboard también coincidan. Si no aparecen en la caja, puedes ir al sitio web del fabricante en que suelen indicar los tipos del CPU que son compatibles con la motherboard. El otro tipo de zócalo es el de PGA, en el que los pines se ubican en el procesador. Cuando instalemos el CPU debemos tomar medidas para que se mantenga fresca, ya que realizar muchas tareas es propensa a sobrecalentarse. También tenemos que incluir un disipador que toma el calor de la CPU y lo disipa con un ventilador o algún otro medio. Hay algún detalle que debo mencionar sobre la CPU. Si compras una CPU verás que tienes una arquitectura de 32 bits o 64 bits. ¿Qué significa esto? Ahora sabemos que podemos procesar 8 bits en binario, así que imagina poder procesar con 32 o incluso con 64 bits. Las CPU que tienen una arquitectura de 32 o 64 bits simplemente especifican cuántos datos pueden manejar eficientemente. Por ahora, la conclusión principal es que la CPU es una de las partes más importantes de la computadora, así que hay que asegurarse de que sea compatible con los otros componentes y que funcione bien según nuestras necesidades informáticas.
If someone asked you, calculate the square root of 5,439,493, would you do the math by hand? Unless you really love tedious math problems, you'd probably use a calculator. What about binary? Well, you probably wouldn't calculate binary by hand either. There's actually a very powerful calculator right inside of your computer that processes binary for us. We've already discussed this in calculator in detail. Do you know what it is? It's our CPU, the brain of our computer. In this video, we'll cover the more practical aspects of the CPU. Remember that translation book that I talked about in an earlier lesson? The CPU uses this to translate and perform functions on our data. This translation book is called an instruction set, which is literally just a list of instructions that our CPU is able to run. Functions like adding, subtracting, copying data are all instructions that our CPU can carry out. Every single program on your computer, while extremely complex, is broken down into very small and simple instructions found in our instruction set. Instruction sets are hard-coded into our CPU, so different CPU manufacturers may use different instruction sets, but they generally perform the same functions. It's like how car manufacturers build their engines differently, but they all get the same job done. You'll probably work with computer hardware as an IT support specialist, replacing failed hard disks, upgrading RAM modules, and installing video cards. So you need to be aware of what's out there. You've probably heard of a few popular CPU manufacturers or chipsets, like Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm. These CPU manufacturers use different product names to differentiate their processors, like Intel Core i7, AMD Athlon, Snapdragon 810, Apple A8, and more. Now when you hear these terms, you'll know what they mean. Each of these CPU manufacturers have their strengths and weaknesses. If you are interested in learning more about why some CPUs are more popular than others, you can check out the next supplemental reading. When you select your CPU, you'll need to make sure it's compatible with your motherboard, the circuit board that connects all your components together. Heads up, you can't just buy a bunch of parts and expect them to work together. There are different ways CPUs fit on motherboards using different sockets. Your CPU might have lots of tiny pins that either stick out or have contact points that look like dots. Depending on your motherboard, you'll need to make sure these CPUs fit correctly in the socket. There are currently two major types of CPU sockets: land grid array, also known as LGA, and pin grid array, also known as PGA. In an LGA socket like this one, there are pins that stick out of the motherboard. The socket size may vary, so always make sure your CPU and socket are compatible beforehand. When you purchase a CPU or motherboard, it'll tell you right on the box what type of socket it has. Make sure your CPU and motherboard socket also both match. If it's not listed on the box, you can go to the manufacturer's website, where it usually lists what types of CPUs are compatible with the motherboard. The other type of socket is the PGA socket, where the pins are located on the processor itself. When we install our CPU, we need to do a few things to it to keep it cool. Since it does a lot of work, it's prone to overheating. We have to make sure to include a heatsink too, which takes the heat from our CPU and dissipates it through a fan or another medium. There's one last thing I want to call out about CPUs. If you purchase a CPU, you'll see that it has either a 32-bit or 64-bit architecture. What does that mean? Well, we know we can process 8 bits in binary. Now, imagine how we can process with 32 or even 64 bits. CPUs that have 32-bit or 64-bit architecture are just specifying how much data they can efficiently handle. For now, the main takeaway is that the CPU is one of the most important parts of a computer. So we have to make sure it's compatible with all other components and can perform well for our computing needs. Let's talk about RAM, our computer's short-term memory. We use RAM to store data that we want to access quickly. This data changes all the time, so it isn't permanent. Almost all RAM is volatile, which means that once we power off our machines, the data stored in RAM is cleared. Remember that our computer is comprised of programs. To run a program, we need to make a copy of it in RAM so our CPU can process it. When you see a new phone or laptop that says it has 16 gig of RAM, that means it can run up to 16 gigs of programs, meaning you can run lots of programs at the same time. When you type in a document, you're using RAM. If you've ever had the misfortune of working on an important presentation or paper and losing power, you know the feeling you get when all of the work you've done is lost. It's a total bummer. This happens to anything with RAM, even video games. Have you ever gone on a long campaign without saving? Then right as you get to a save point, the power goes off on the console and all the progress you've made is lost forever? It's no fun at all. You spend the next hour or so deciding whether or not just to rage quit the game completely and start all over from scratch. Not that this happened to me or anything, that was just a friend. Anyway, all of this happens because RAM clears its data when powered off. There are lots of types of RAM, and the one that's commonly found in computers is DRAM, or Dynamic Random Access Memory. When a 1 or a 0 is sent to DRAM, it stores each bit in a microscopic capacitor. This is either charged or discharged, represented by 1 or a 0. These semiconductors are put into chips that are on the RAM and store our data. There are also different types of memory sticks that DRAM chips can be put on. The more modern DIMM sticks, which usually stands for Dual Inline Memory Module, have different sizes of pins on them. I should call out, we don't really buy RAM based on the number of DRAM chips they have. They're labeled by the capacity of RAM on a stick, like an 8 gig stick of RAM. After DRAM was created, RAM manufacturers built something called SDRAM, which stands for Synchronous DRAM. This type of RAM is synchronized to our system's clock speed, allowing quicker processing of data. In today's system, we use another type of RAM called Double Data Rate SDRAM, or DDR SDRAM for short. Most people refer to this RAM as DDR, even shorter. There are lots of iterations of DDR, from DDR1, DDR2, DDR3, and now DDR4. DDR is faster, takes up less power, and has a larger capacity than earlier SDRAM versions. The latest version, DDR4, is the fastest type of short-term memory currently available for your computer. And faster RAM means that programs can be run faster and that more programs can run at the same time. Keep in mind that any RAM sticks you use need a compatible motherboard, where the different number of pins align with the motherboard. Let's talk about motherboard RAM slots. Let's talk about RAM. Let's talk about RAM. Just like with the CPU, make sure that your motherboard is compatible with any RAM sticks that you buy. Up next, we'll take a deep dive into motherboards.
Vamos a hablar sobre las placas bases. La motherboard es la base que sostiene a la computadora. Nos permite expandir su funcionalidad mediante tarjetas de expansión. Dirige la energía de la fuente de alimentación y permite que las diferentes partes se comuniquen entre sí. En resumen, es la jefa principal. Cada motherboard tiene características clave. Primero está el chipset que decide cómo los componentes se comunican entre sí en nuestra máquina. El chipset en la motherboard está compuesto de dos chips. Uno es el puente norte que interconecta los elementos como la RAM y la tarjeta video. El otro es el puente sur que mantiene los controladores E-S, entrada y salida, como los discos duros y las unidades USB por las que ingresan y salen datos. En algunas CPUs modernas el puente norte se ha integrado directamente en la CPU, por lo que hay un chipset del puente norte independiente. El chipset es un componente clave de la motherboard que nos permite administrar los datos de la CPU, la RAM y los periféricos. Los periféricos son dispositivos externos que conectamos a la computadora como mouse, teclado o monitor. Además de los chipsets, las motherboards tienen otra característica clave que permite el uso de las ranuras de expansión. Las ranuras de expansión también ofrecen la capacidad de aumentar la funcionalidad de la computadora. Si quieres actualizar la tarjeta de gráficos, podrías comprar una e instalarla en la ranura de expansión de tu motherboard. El estándar de un bus de expansión hoy es PCI Express o interconexión de componentes periféricos Express. Un bus PCI es similar a la ranura de los motherboards y una tarjeta de expansión de la base PCIe se ve como una placa de circuitos más pequeña. El último componente de las motherboards del que hablaremos es el factor de la forma. Hay varios tamaños de motherboards disponibles hoy. Estos tamaños o factores forman determinada la cantidad de elementos que podemos poner y el espacio que tendremos. El factor de forma más común de las motherboards es ATX, que significa Advanced Technology Extended. ATX también viene en diferentes tamaños. En computadoras de escritorio verás ATX de tamaño completo. Si no quieres usar un factor de forma ATX, puedes usarlo uno ITX o factor de forma Information Technology Extended. Son placas mucho más pequeñas que la ATX. Por ejemplo, una Intel NUC usa una variación de la placa ITX que viene en tres tamaños: Mini ITX, Nano ITX y Pico ITX. Cuando ensambles tu computadora debes considerar el tipo de factor de forma que quieres. ¿Quieres algo pequeño que no pueda manejar mucha carga de trabajo? ¿O quieres algo más potente en los que puedas agregar más funciones? El factor de forma también influye en las ranuras de expansión que puedes usar. Comprende las motherboards y sus características pueden ser una ventaja para solucionar problemas de hardware, ya que son aspectos como el tipo de módulo de RAM o zócalo de la CPU. Depende del tipo de motherboard en la que se colocará. Supongamos que estás respondiendo a un ticket de un usuario con problemas de video. No sería bueno que tengas que ir hasta su escritorio para darte cuenta de que la tarjeta de gráficos que compraste no es compatible con la motherboard de la computadora.
The motherboard, the foundation that holds our computer together. It lets us expand our computer's functionality by adding expansion cards. It routes power from the power supply, and it allows the different parts of the computer to communicate with each other. In short, it's a total boss. Every motherboard has a few key characteristics. First is the chipset, which decides how components talk to each other on our machine. The chipset on motherboards is made up of two chips. One is called the North Bridge that interconnects stuff like RAM and video cards. The other chip is the South Bridge, which maintains our I/O or input-output controllers, like hard drives and USB devices that input and output data. In some modern CPUs, the North Bridge has been directly integrated into the CPU, so there isn't a separate North Bridge chipset. The chipset is a key component of our motherboard that allows us to manage data between our CPU, RAM, and peripherals. Peripherals are the external devices we connect to our computer, like a mouse, keyboard, and a monitor. In addition to the chipsets, motherboards have another key characteristic, which allows the use of expansion slots. Expansion slots also give us the ability to increase the functionality of our computer. If you wanted to upgrade your graphics card, you could purchase one and just install it on your motherboard through the expansion slot. The standard for an expansion bus today is the PCI Express, or Peripheral Component Interconnect Express. A PCIe bus looks like a slot on the motherboard, and a PCIe base expansion card looks like a smaller circuit board. The last component of motherboards that we'll discuss is form factor. There are different sizes of motherboards that are available today. These sizes or form factors determine the amount of stuff we can put in it and the amount of space we'll have. The most common form factor for motherboards is ATX, which stands for Advanced Technology Extended. ATX actually comes in different sizes too. In desktops, you'll commonly see full-sized ATXs. If you don't want to use an ATX form factor, you could use an ITX or Information Technology Extended form factor. These are much smaller than ATX boards. For example, the Intel NUC uses a variation of the ITX board, which comes in 3 board sizes: Mini ITX, Nano ITX, and Pico ITX. When building your computer, you will need to keep in mind what type of form factor you want. Do you want to build something small that can't handle as much workload? Or do you want a powerhouse workstation that you can add lots of functionality to? The form factor will also play a role into what expansion slots you might want to use. Understanding motherboards and their characteristics can be a big plus when fixing hardware issues, since things like the type of RAM module or processor into. Let's say you're responding to a ticket for a user who's having video problems. You don't want to make it all the way to their desk only to realize the graphics card you bought as a replacement doesn't fit the motherboard their computer uses.